So for the last 3 weeks, all I've heard about is Arne Slot, how he schooled Ten Hag, how his system is revolutionary, how Liverpool could potentially be title contenders. But I haven't seen a single video analysing how Nuno outclassed and outschooled Slot as Forest beat them by 1-0. So here it is. Welcome to the in-depth analysis on how Nuno schooled Slot at Anfield. Good morning, good evening, or good night. Hope you guys are doing well, and welcome back to a bit of a throwback video where we're gonna get right into it, under the bonnet of it, get our geek on, look at stats, look at formations, and look at exactly how Slot got schooled by the masterclass that Nuno produced. If you're enjoying the content, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. And don't forget the football prize for the Moreno shirt ends tonight at 7:30 p.m. UK time. So if you want to get your tickets, there's still quite a few there. Go grab yourself that, and you get the Insta prize win. Ticket 34 gets you Ola Aina. Aina? Is that the correct way of saying? Let me know in the comments down below. Or ticket 131 gets you Milenkovic. Okay, let's jump into this video because there's a lot to talk about. What I'm going to do, I'm going to break it down into some key points. Firstly, I'm going to explain to you guys what this whole revolutionary football is that Arne Slot brought to Liverpool and why people were bigging him up and giving him all his flowers. Then I'm going to show you how Nuno addressed it and what Nuno changed in the tactics to basically outschool him. And it's very interesting to see, especially in the shapes, the personnels, etc. And then we're just going to remember that Forest beat Liverpool at Anfield. So let's jump into this. I'm going to start with the average positions. I know I showed a small shot of it yesterday, but I want to show you it side by side so you can see how Forest looked and how Liverpool looked. So let's get across to that now. And if we line them up side by side, now remember, average positions doesn't mean the formation. But I just want to show you that Forest were not playing a low block. Contrary to what loads of pundits are saying, as you can see, on average, most of our players were in and around the halfway line. Forest was setting traps for Liverpool, boxing in people like McAllister, Gravenberch as well, players like that. But what I want to show you is the narrowness that we had down the middle of this spine. So if I were to draw a line just in between the penalty areas, rough lines there, you can see that the majority of the Forest team are playing between the width of the penalty area. Only really Anderson and Moreno were outside of it, and Einar on the other side. And I'll explain why that was the case in just a second. But you can see it was the same with Liverpool as well. Now, why is that? What has he changed in terms of Slot for Liverpool in comparison to what you were seeing under Klopp? The main change really is what's happening with Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, his position is slightly skewed because he moved into a midfielder position in the second half. But really what you've been seeing with him, instead of going outside to create the extra width with Mo Salah, which probably would have worked for them, he was inverting inside to create the extra body in midfield. And why is that? Because Liverpool like to do a high trigger press with 4 to 5 people. So you'll have the likes of Jota, Salah and Diaz as the front three on the press, but they would also be triggered as well by Szoboszlai and McAllister. If they can win the ball high up, then in the transition in the attack, they will have at least 4, probably 5, maybe even 6 players in that transition, which means they're attacking a back line which may at that stage be 3, 4 players tops, and it creates opportunities for them. So he's really hell-bent on this trigger points, these high presses that they can do. And what it allows when you put Trent in there, it blocks other corridors. So if a defender is over here trying to get it out to a winger, there's a potential there that Trent's blocking those channels. So that's why he's doing it. Now, the other key thing that happens is that Diaz tends to play wider than most. He tends to hug the touchline. And the thought process of that is that what Slot wants to do is stretch out that defensive back line. So the right back stretched out, you have the 2 centre backs stretched out, and then Salah's occupying potentially the left back here, which then creates gaps in between the defensive line to allow the players to come through. And this is what Nuno protected beautifully. What we saw in terms of the setup, and I'll show you some pictures in just a second, was that although Arne was quite wide averagely, because he would go out and meet Diaz, you instantly had Dominguez and Yates here, who what they would do is drop in to plug the space. So if Arne was dragged out wide to chase Diaz, then usually you saw Yates dropping in to fill the hole to keep that compressed lines between the two sides of the penalty box, and then Dominguez sitting in front of him, or sometimes you saw if Yates was too far forward, Dominguez would do the same. So even though it would force Arne slightly wide, the gap was still compressed, and that kind of integrity of between the penalty boxes was still held. Forest were disciplined in this and did not allow the space to be created where they would be stretched sideways across the lines. The other thing to understand as well is the lines going in the opposite directions, and I'm talking between the midfield lines and the attacking lines here. Now, what Liverpool like to do is get the likes of Sofascore and McAllister in between the midfield and the defence in that pocket to create some space. What Nuno made sure happened was the gaps between those two rows were very, very narrow. And this is why he set it up it was technically a 4-3-2-1, but it also played out as a 4-4-2 and in some instances a 4-5-1. It was a very fluid set of formations. So this is why, and this is why Liverpool were getting very frustrated. Let's move on and show it to you in game. Okay, so I've got a quick example here for you guys to show you just how this sets up. As you can see, there's Forest back three with Arne just keeping an eye on Diaz there. And then if you look here, look how nice and narrow the midfield three are. That was Dominguez, Yates, and Ward-Prowse there. And then you can see the two here that's Dominguez and Morgan Gibbs-White. And then you've got Wood there. So technically you're looking there at a 4-3-2-1 setup. That would have been Yates, Ward-Prowse and Anderson, just to correct it, and Dominguez and Morgan Gibbs-White. Now, why was Dominguez at times released up here? Because he is very good at the high press in the opposition half. So that was one of the setups, and that's how Forest did line up. Now, it did sometimes create some holes if Dominguez would overcommit to a challenge. Sometimes he wouldn't be aware of the gaps he was creating in behind him. But in general, Forest were very disciplined at it. And as you can see, this place here in particular, there was no Liverpool players in between the lines and the pockets. If a Liverpool player was to go in there, these three would move in unison, almost narrow up as well, to squeeze the space between them and the centre-backs. And this one here is just a quick example of what I was talking about. So when Arne got pulled out towards Diaz, and as I said, that's part of Slot's tactics, is to pull and stretch that back line. What you can see here is Dominguez is on his way back because I believe that's Yates there, was slightly higher up in this sequence of events. And what he's going to do is just plug that hole. Then Yates is going to get himself in here to protect and keep the consistency of the gaps between the defensive line and the midfield line. So it was all very professional, almost military-like, the way Forest was setting it up. So this is one of the chances Liverpool were able to create. There was a ball with the outside of the boot coming from McAllister going towards Jota in the box. But what I want to show you is just the sheer numbers Forest had, and again, the gaps. So if you look here, you've got, these are the four defenders roughly here. Yates has gone a little bit deeper, but coming out to get in line. And then you've got Dominguez and I think Ward-Prowse there, and Anderson covering the back man there. The key thing here is there's no one in between these lines. This is the space that Liverpool would like to operate. And not only that, but you got Dominguez and Ward-Prowse coming straight at McAllister to close that space to not allow him the time. Now, credit to McAllister, outside of the boot, he put in a good cross. Some may argue Jota could have done better. But Forest, in that sequence, had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players back, boxed in, and again the gaps are maintained even though it's deeper in the pitch. In fact, as we got deeper, the spaces became even smaller, which allowed Liverpool even less space to operate and was just creating frustration amongst their attacking threat. So when we got to the second half and we saw the substitutions Nuno made, Even though he brought on 2 wingers, in the attack, it was different to how he asked them to set up in defense. So again, if we have a look at this, you can see, you can't see it in shot, but you got the defensive line there as a 4. You've then got the 4-2-3-1 rough shape there. So you got Ward-Prowse and Yates, who are over here. You got Elanga, who is a little deep, helping with the width there. And then you had, so technically Elanga would have been roughly there in the shape. And then you got Hudson-Odoi and Morgan Gibbs-White there with Chris Wood in front of them. Now, there was no real space here still for Liverpool to operate. As you can see between the lines, Morgan Gibbs-White, probably you want him that side of Gravenberch, but he is covering him. You got Yates keeping an eye on Slobberslide there. And you got Virgil van Dijk with the ball here, with no real outlets. What the design of this is to force the ball out wide, to say to them, let's see what you can do out there. However, Virgil didn't take that chance. Eventually, he ends up playing a ball here across towards Trent. And Ward-Prowse was able just to step out, get the ball, lay it off to Yates, and Forest created a counter-attack where Elanga was able to shoot. This should have been a huge warning sign to Liverpool. Forest shape was too good. They were over-committing and way too high up, even though that is normally how they play their football. But the shape was just absolutely baffling them with the tactics. And as you can see, you got Trent here inverting, still playing narrow. Honestly, what Liverpool should have done is played him as a more orthodox right back. Looked to have doubled down the wing with him and Salah against the fullback. But he just stuck to his tactic of bringing him inside. Again, when you look at the goal here, you can see the integrity of the shape. Your back 4 is across there. You've got your 6 and the 8 in Ward-Prowse and Yates. And then you've got your wingers there who have come in narrow. And this is the key thing. They're keeping that narrow shape in between the lines of the penalty box. And then because Wood has tracked back, Morgan Gibbs-White holds his position there. Now, this leads to the Forest goal because the ball's about to come in to, I think it was Nunes there, if I remember rightly. And Milenkovic can just bat him off with his strength. And this is where the change happens. Once Forest pick the ball up, they're able to transition and then they go for the width in the counter-attack. So you can see here now, if we look at the shape of it, look how wide Elanga is. He's literally by the throw-in line. You got Morgan Gibbs-White going down the middle, and down here Callum Hudson-Odoi sneaking in behind this Liverpool defensive line. Now what you're going to notice is that they shift. Liverpool get attracted to the ball. I would argue they were ball watching a bit. And if you look at this shape now, they've moved themselves, almost all 3 of them, of the defensive line across to the left-hand side of the pitch. And that gives him the space to operate in. And it makes it, although it was a hard ball, in essence, someone of Elanga's skill just threads the ball nicely through that little corridor straight to Callum Hudson-Odoi. Now, it doesn't end there. Because the key thing to notice here, and I don't know if a lot of people saw it in game, was Morgan Gibbs-White. He made a run across here. Once Hudson-Odoi had got in on the inside of Bradley, Morgan Gibbs-White creates a run across Konate. One, it blocks him off, so he can't get too close to Hudson-Odoi because Bradley has lost him here. And also, it creates a passing channel. Now, Konate, had he gone with Morgan Gibbs-White, would have made it even easier for Hudson-Odoi to take the shots. And then when we get to this screen here, you can see Callum Hudson-Odoi could have just threaded a ball in there to Morgan Gibbs-White. But there's the key thing from what Morgan Gibbs-White did. Create that disconnect between Konate and Hudson-Odoi. And that just allows him to hit the cheat code into the corner with the finesse. And that's how Forest take the lead. All right, so very quickly, I want to show you the heat map of the match as well. I know a lot of you do like this one. You can see touch-wise as well, Liverpool had 785 compared to Forest 463. But this kind of just underlines what I was saying here. You can see with Forest, in our half, the majority of the touches are in this area. Obviously, I'm not putting cells in there. In the middle, in between the penalty area sticks. And when we attacked, it was wide to stretch the Liverpool back line from both sides. That would have been Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. And as you can see with Liverpool's heat map, which I found fascinating, is most of the heat is here in the middle of the park. Nothing really down the wings to try and get in behind. They tried it on this side, but Moreno had Salah in his pocket. And because Forest was so resolute, here on this key bit here, you can see absolutely very limited touches, freedom, and potential for chances for Liverpool in that box because of the way Nuno set it up. It was an absolute masterclass and baffled Slot. And after all the big ups he's had and all the praise he got for what he did at Old Trafford, little old Nuno came to Anfield and absolutely taught him a footballing lesson. And really this video for me was just to show that Nuno should be getting some credit and a lot of flowers. He's had his critics. People have talked about him being defensive and what have you. I completely disagree with that. I think he's got a proper footballing brain on him. And that is an example of what you see. Understanding your opponents, understanding the opponent manager and his philosophies is a huge advantage. And I think Nuno is brilliant at it. Now, credit has to go to the players as well, because we've seen this tried before, these things, say, under Steve Cooper previously, and the plan has been executed, but then we saw silly mistakes from the players on the pitch. What it needed when you execute that is to limit the mistakes that the players are making. And yes, we saw the one from Ryan Yates and one from Sells, but outside of that, Forest was so resolute and didn't give Liverpool a sniff on human error. And that played a massive part in it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know we haven't done it for a while, but I think this game deserved us to get under the bonnet and really dissect what was happening. If you've enjoyed the content, as always, if you haven't already, please don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV. If you are new, go grab your tickets. You've only got till tonight for the football prizes giveaway. And we'll see you on the next video. Come on, you Reds.